Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. In part 11 today, we are going to discuss 15 very latest and important questions for AZ-104 certification exam. If my video adds any value to your learning, please do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you have already done, thank you for that. We have already covered 115 very important questions for AZ-104 certification exam. For each part, if you want a PDF version with all the questions and answer, then you have to answer some simple questions which are asked in the respective parts. If you are looking forward for the PDF versions of part 11 question and answers, then you have to tell me the correct answer for question number 118, question number 123 and question number 130. So do watch the video till the very end without skipping so that you don't miss any important question and answer. Beginning our part 11 with question number 116. The question says that you have an Azure virtual machine named VM1 that runs on Windows Server 2019. The VM was deployed using default drive settings. You sign in to VM1 as a user named user1 and perform the following actions. Create files on drive C and then you create files on drive D. You also modify the screensaver timeout and then you change the desktop background. Once you have performed all these actions, after that you plan to redeploy the virtual machine. Which changes will be lost after you redeploy virtual machine 1? The choices given are the modified screensaver timeout, the new desktop background, the new files on drive D and the new files on drive C. So which one of these you think will be lost once the virtual machine 1 is redeployed? Before answering the question, let's first understand what exactly happens when you redeploy a virtual machine. So in the process of redeployment of a virtual machine, Azure actually shuts down the virtual machine and then it moves the virtual machine to a new node within the Azure infrastructure. Post that, it actually power on the virtual machine once again. And here comes the important part. Once the power on is done and the virtual machine is back, then it actually retains all your configuration options and associated resources. It means that you will still have modified screensaver timeout or your new desktop background. Moving ahead, we have new files on drive D and new files on drive C. Now drive C is a permanent disk. So all the files that are created on drive C will never be lost. So they are permanent. However, that's not the case with drive D. The drive D is a temporary drive, so the new files stored on drive D will be lost. And that's why the correct answer for this question is option number C, the new files on drive D. Just a quick tip from my side is if the question is tweaked or changed from Microsoft and instead of Windows Server 2019, the question contains a machine which is Linux based, then the files or the temporary files are not stored in drive D, but they are stored mostly on /dev/sdb1. So in case the question is more around Linux, then you know that this is the correct answer to be chosen from that question. Now let's check out our question number 117. It says that you sign up for Azure Active Directory Premium 2. You need to add a user named admin1@contoso.com as an administrator on all the computers that will be joined to Azure AD domain. What should you configure in Azure AD? The choices given are device setting from the device blade or providers from the MFA server blade, or the third option is user setting from the user blade, or the last option is general setting from the groups blade. The correct answer for this question is option A, device setting from the devices blade. Now let me show you the exact steps how to do it, and then I will show you all those steps in the Azure portal also. So here it goes. It says that in Azure portal, you can manage the device administrator role on the devices page. Now to open the devices page, first you have to log into the Azure portal and you have to keep in mind that you must be global administrator or device administrator. As a second step, you have to go to the left-hand side navigation bar and there you have to choose Azure Active Directory. The third step is that in a manage section, then you have to reach out to the devices, and once you are on the devices page, then you have to click the device setting. Now let's go to the Azure portal and let's do it ourselves. So here I am on the Azure portal. I'm already logged in and you can see this left hand side navigation bar. I can reach to the Azure Active Directory from here. The other way to reach Azure Active Directory is your recent services Or the third way to reach Azure Active Directory is this search bar. You can search here Azure Active Directory and it will be listed here. So you can reach it from here as well. However, for now, let's go back to the left hand side navigation side and click Azure Active Directory. Now here, once you are in the Azure Active Directory, as we saw in the PPT as well, we have to go to the devices. Now, once we are in the devices, we have to click on this, which says all devices. And now that you are in all devices, from here you can click to the device setting and all the settings that you want to do can be done here. Hopefully now you have understood how you have to do device setting from the device blade. Before moving ahead, I just wanted to say that friends, it takes considerable amount of time and effort to find Microsoft documentation to justify each answer and give you an explanation for each question in our exam series. Please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your each like encourages me and ensures that the video is reaching to a greater audience. Do share the videos with everyone having interest in learning Azure Cloud technologies. Your comments and feedbacks give me a chance to understand what you want to see on this channel and help me improve my content. I always make sure to read each of your comments and reply to them. So keep supporting me and I promise to bring the content that helps you grow in your career. Now let's read our question number 118. It says that an IT administrator creates an Azure virtual machine scale set with 10 VMs. However, VMs are running at max capacity with CPU being fully consumed and additional VMs are not deploying in the scale set. Now you need to ensure that additional VMs are deployed when the CPU is 80% consumed. What should you do? Select one option. Your options are enable auto scale option or increase the instance count or add the scale set automation script to the library, or should you deploy the scale set automation script? And the correct answer for this question is enable the auto scale option. Quickly moving ahead to question number 119. The question says a company needs to create a storage account that needs to have the following requirement. The first requirement is that user should be able to add files such as images and videos in the primary location. The second one is the data needs to be available even if a region goes down. Then the third requirement is the solution needs to be cost effective. What is the type of replication that needs to be configured for the storage account? And your options are geo-redundant storage, locally redundant storage, zone redundant storage, and read access geo-redundant storage. So which one do you think of these four is the correct answer for this question? Now let's understand the question before we jump into the answer. So if you see the question, there are few important hints that Microsoft gives you in this question. The first one is that user should be able to add files in primary location. So this line is very important because if you understand it very carefully, it says that only primary location should be writable. We do not want to write files in the secondary location. So that's very important. Now, secondly, you have to understand that the data must be available even if the region goes down. So we are not talking about zonal redundancy or local redundancy. We are already in the region redundancy. And you know what that does is that helps you eliminate some of the options. For example, you can already eliminate option B and option C because they offer locally redundant or zone redundant. So we are not into these two options because our question talks about region redundancy. Now, another very important point is that the solution must be cost effective. Now, looking at all these requirements, the correct answer for this question is read access geo-redundant storage. Now you may ask that why I have not chosen geo-redundant storage because that can also offer the same functionality. However, you must understand that geo-redundant storage is costlier when it's compared to read access geo-redundant storage. And we do not want to spend more money because firstly, the solution must be cost effective. And secondly, we do not have any requirement that says that we need to add files or write files in the secondary location. So the best cost-effective answer to this question is option D. Now that we are talking about Azure storage account, let's take few more questions based around Azure storage. In the question number 120, it says that your company has an Azure subscription with a storage account. The storage account includes a queue service, a table service, Azure Files, and a blob service. You have created two apps that must be configured to store various types of data to all the storage services. You need to configure the required number of endpoints for the apps. And the solution given here is that you configure 4 endpoints per app. Does this solution meet the goal? The correct answer for this question is yes, it does meet the goal, and you actually need to configure 4 endpoints per app to meet this business requirement. Now the logic of this question I will explain in the question number 121, which is the very next question, because that also represents or gives you a variation of the same question. It's a confusing question and you will find a lot of variations on various sites which are giving a lot of different answers. So do not skip the video and watch the next question very carefully if you want to understand this logic. So this is our question number 121, exactly the same as question number 120, except for a small change. In this question, now we have two storage account instead of one storage account that we saw in question number 120. Besides that, the answer is also the same. Here also it says that you configure 4 endpoints per app. So now does this meet the goal? And the correct answer for this question is no. In this case, it does not meet the goal. However, in question number 120, I picked the answer as yes. Now let me take you to the Microsoft site and then I will validate why I pick a no for question number 121 and why I pick a yes for the previous question 120. Okay, so now I am at the Microsoft documentation and this document gives you an overview of the storage account. You can read a lot more about storage account, what are the different types of storage account. However, the section that I want to show you is this one. And this section reads out like construct of the URL for accessing an object in a storage account by appending the object's location in the storage account to the endpoint. For example, the URL of a blob will be similar to, and you can see here is a construct of the URL given. I will zoom it a little more so that you can clearly see it. Now let's dissect the construct of the URL. So first of all, in the URL, we always will have a storage account name. So whatever is your storage account name, that will be the first in the URL. And that will be followed by blob.co.windows.net. So that's a protocol from Microsoft Azure to build the core URL of any blob in the storage account. Now following this base URL, you will always have a container name, and only after the container name you will have the actual blob file. So what is the construct here that we are seeing? We are seeing that we always will have a storage account, and then inside a storage account we will have container, and inside the container we will have the actual blob file. So keep this construct in mind when we return to the presentation. So now we are back in the presentation, and as you saw that we first will have a storage account, then we will have a container, and then we will have our blob. So what happens is now that we have two storage account. So for every storage account, this base URL will always be different. I hope you're getting my point. Listen it very carefully again. So for every storage account, we have two storage account. We will always have a different URL at this part of the hyperlink. So you see that? So we have a different URL here. And then we will have a container. So how many containers we will have? We will have container for each of the storage accounts. For example, we have one queue, then we have one table service, then we have one Azure files, and then we also have a blob service. So first of all, we will have a storage account, and then after that we will have the name of the container. Let's say we have a blob service here, and once we have this blob service, and then only we will have the actual blob name. So that's the reason I'm saying that 4 endpoints will not suffice, because now we have two storage account, and inside one storage account we have 4 other services. So then, as I understand, we would at least need 8 endpoints to fulfill this business case. I hope you understand, but if you have any other thoughts or if you have any other justification, then please let me know in the comment section, and then we can discuss it further. Now let's check out our question number 122, which again is an Azure storage account related question. Let's read the question. The question says that you have an Azure storage account named storage1, and then you have an Azure app service named app1 and an app named app2 that runs in an Azure container instance. Each app uses a managed identity. Now you need to ensure that app1 and app2 can read blobs from storage1. The The solution must meet the following requirement. The first requirement is that you minimize the number of secrets used. And the second one is that you ensure that app 2 can only read from storage 1 for next 30 days. What should you configure in storage 1 for each app? And here you can see that we are given with app 1 and we are given with app 2, and there are some options given and you have to pick the right option for each app. So the correct answer for app 1 is that we need to select access control or IAM. The reason being that since app 1 uses manage identity, app 1 can access the storage account via IAM. As per the requirement, we need minimum number of secrets used. And as per the requirement, we need to use minimum number of secrets. And that's why the best option here is to use access control. Moving on, the correct answer for the app 2 is that we should use shared access signatures. And the clear reason for selecting SAS as a solution for this option is because it says that app 2 can only read from storage for the next 30 days. So we need a conditional or we need a temporary access on storage 1 for next 30 days. And the best way to do or achieve that is using shared access signatures. Now let's quickly jump to the question number 123. It says that you have a general purpose V1 Azure storage account named storage1 that uses locally redundant storage or LRS. You need to ensure that the data in the storage account is protected if a zone fails. The solution must minimize cost and administrative effort. What should you do first? And your options are create a new storage account, or configure object replication rules, or should you upgrade account to the general purpose version 2 or V2, or modify the replication settings of storage 1. And the correct answer for this question is that you should upgrade the account to the general purpose V2 or the version 2. Our question number 124 says that you have an Azure subscription named subscription 1 that contains a virtual network named VNet1. Now VNet1 is in a resource group named RG1. Subscription 1 has a user named user1 and the user1 has following roles. Now you need to ensure that the user1 can assign reader role for the VNet1 to other users. What should you do? So should you remove user1 from the security reader and reader roles for subscription 1? Or should you assign user1 the user access administrator role for VNet1? Or the other option is assign user1 the network contributor role for VNet1. The last option is assign user1 the network contributor role for the RG1. And the correct answer for this question is that you should assign user1 the user access administrator role for VNet1 or virtual network. Question number 125, and that says that you have an Azure subscription named subscription 1 that is used by several departments at your company. Now subscription 1 contains resources as shown in this table. Here you can see that we have a lot of resources. We have storage 1, RG1, container and share 1. And here you can also see that we are given with the type of the resource available. So we have storage account, then we have resource group, we also have a container, and then lastly we have a file share. Moving on, the question says that another administrator deploys a virtual machine named VM1 and Azure storage account named storage2 by using a single Azure resource manager template. Now you need to view the template used for the deployments. From which blade can you view the template that was used for the deployment? And your options are storage 1, RG1, container 1 or share 1. In a nutshell, the question is saying that the virtual machine and a storage account both are deployed using ARM templates. And you want to see which ARM template was used to deploy both these resources. Now let's go to the Microsoft documentation and find out the correct answer. So this is the Microsoft documentation that exactly shows where from in Azure portal you can see the ARM template. And if you will come down to this section which says export template from a resource group, you can already see in fact that we are talking about resource group. So here you can see, I know it's a little small, but I will give the link for this documentation in the description box. But for now, just concentrate that we are here in this resource group. You can see very small letters here, but please try to concentrate. It says my resource group. So essentially it's a resource group. And then in the resource group, you can see the template. So all the templates inside a resource group, you can see it in the resource group blade. And with that documentation from Microsoft, it's easy to answer this question. The correct answer, of course, is RG1 or the resource group. Now we have question number 126. It says that you have an Azure web app named App1 having deployment slots shown in the following table. You can see we have two web app names. We have web app 1 prod, which is production, and then we have web app 1 test, which is a test environment. Further on, the question says in web app 1 test, you test several changes to app 1. So basically you are testing something in your test environment and then you back up app 1. You swap web app 1 test for web app 1 prod and discover that app 1 is experiencing some performance issues. You need to revert to the previous version of app 1 as quickly as possible. What should you do? Your options are redeploy app 1, or should you swap the slots, or should you clone app 1, or the last option is restore the backup of app 1. Now, if you will read this question very carefully, the answer is actually hidden in the question itself. Let me show you how. So in the question, it says that once you are done with some changes in app 1, which is essentially in a test environment, then to deploy it in the production environment, you just swap the web app 1 test with web app 1 prod. So that's the easiest way. Whenever you have the slots, if you have ever worked with the slots, you just swap the slots and bring test environment to production once you have all the changes in test environment, and production to the test environment. So this is called swapping of slots. Now you can already think that when you are experiencing some performance issues with the production environment now, what is the best way? The best way is to go back to the previous version of your app. And where is that previous version now? That previous version is now in the test slot, because you just did the swapping between these two slots. So now you can do it again. So the best answer for this question is that you just need to swap the slots. Now quickly moving to question number 127. The question says that Azure Backup has unlimited data transfer. Is that a yes or a no? The correct answer for this question is yes, it is correct, because Azure Backup does not limit the amount of inbound or outbound data that is transferred. So that's why the correct answer is yes. Moving on, we have question number 128 that says that Azure Backup requires which of the following? Does it require a dedicated backup server or a recovery service vault, or does it require an Azure Blob Storage container? And the correct answer for this question is option B, a recovery service vault. And now we have question number 129. The question says that your company wants to back up files and folders to Azure. Which of these steps should be completed first? Should it be download the agent and credentials file, or configure the backup, or should it be create the recovery service vault? And the correct answer for this question is that you should always create the recovery service vault as a first step. And just to tell you that download the agent and credential file is the very next step after you have created the recovery service vault. So keep that in mind. Maybe Microsoft tweaked the question and it may ask you choose the first two steps. So then you should know the first one is recovery service vault and the second one is download the agent and credential file. So friends, in part 11 today, we took a lot of questions around Azure Storage Account. And that's the reason I wanted the last question for our part 11 to be also related to Azure Storage Account. So let's read our question number 130. The question says that you have an Azure subscription named Subscription 1. Now you create an Azure Storage account named Contoso Storage and then you create a file share named Data. Now, which UNC path should you include in a script that references files from the data file share? And your options are listed here. The correct answer for this question is option A, contosostorage.file.code.windows.net/data. If you want the detailed understanding of why I picked option A as an answer, then you should check question number 121 that I explained in this part itself. I hope you like this set of 15 questions in part 11. And before you close this video, please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. If this video has added any value in your learning, a like and subscribe is highly appreciated. Share this video in your family and friends to spread and expand their learning. Your comments and feedback give me a chance to interact with you and I look forward for them. We will meet again in our next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.